Shalom, Esther Githui-Ewart. Welcome to Africa 54. Here's what's coming up. U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin arrived in Israel on Monday for an official visit aimed at strengthening regional security as Israel continues its war against Hamas. Congo's incumbent President Felix Tshisekedi faces stiff competition as he eyes second term in office. And Egypt's Abdel Fattah al-Sisi wins the presidential race with 89.6% of the vote, securing a third term. All this and much more coming up on today's Africa 54. 10 weeks into Israel's war with Hamas, much of northern Gaza has been reduced to rubble and nearly 19,000 Palestinians have been killed, according to the Hamas-run health ministry in Gaza, which does not differentiate between civilian and combatant deaths. Israel says 116 of its soldiers have died in its ground offensive after Hamas raided southern Israel on October 7th, killing about 1,200 people, mostly civilians, and seizing some 240 hostages. Plumes of thick smoke rose over Gaza's skyline as Israel continued its heavy fighting in Gaza. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is pledging to destroy Hamas, but he also has immense pressure on him to recover hostages held by Hamas, the Iranian-backed militant group. The war continues to shake regional and world powers as the Palestinian civilian death toll rises. Human Rights Watch is accusing Israel of deliberately starving Gaza's population, blocking the delivery of water, food and fuel, while willfully impeding humanitarian assistance, according to the Associated Press. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin is in Israel Monday, where he pressed Israel to wind down its offensive in Gaza. Austin underscored Washington's unwavering commitment to Israel's right to defend itself in accordance with international humanitarian law, but he also discussed steps that Israel needs to take to mitigate civilian harm. Secretary Austin was in Bahrain Sunday after a quick stop in Kuwait, where he led a presidential delegation to offer condolences for the death of Sheikh Nawaf al-Ahmad al-Sabah, the Emir of Kuwait. He was joined by Air Force General Charles Q. Brown, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Meanwhile, a short time ago, Secretary Austin spoke in Tel Aviv at a joint press conference with Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant about the war in Gaza.
America's support for Israel's security is unshakable, and Israel is not alone. At a time of mourning, a real friend shows up, and I know how terrible these days have been for the Israeli people. And I know that October 7th touched everyone in this small democracy. So let me again extend my deepest condolences to Minister Gadi Eisenkot, who has been sitting Shiva for his...
That was U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin speaking in Tel Aviv on Monday. Amid global calls for a ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas war, Israel faces growing pressure to protect Palestinian civilians in its military operations and secure the release of the remaining hostages taken on October 7th. VOA's Veronica Balderas Iglesias has more.
Israel, Qatar and Bahrain are among the countries that U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin is expected to visit in the coming days. The announcement came as more reports of destruction and human despair in Gaza emerged Sunday. In that context, several U.S. legislators urged Israel to protect civilians as it pursues its war against Hamas.
68,000 children have been killed. 85% of the people in Gaza have had to leave their homes. They're living in shelters. Disease is going up.
When it comes to the humanitarian crisis, we still have a near total siege. Now, as of today, there may be some progress. Israel finally opening the Kerem Shalom crossing, which is a very important crossing. It shouldn't take this long.
Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, interviewed on NBC, also expressed hope for Israel to limit civilian deaths and encouraged it to think about the future.
Saudi Arabia and other Arab countries cannot normalize with Israel if they're having been seen as throwing the Palestinians under the bus.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is also facing growing criticism domestically over the hostage crisis, which began on October 7, when Hamas carried out a deadly terrorist attack and kidnapped more than 240 Israelis and foreigners. Last week, 3 of the captives were mistakenly killed by the Israel Defense Forces, and a funeral for one of them was held Sunday. Relatives of other hostages began camping near Israel's Ministry of Defense and demanding negotiations to secure their release.
We want to get them alive. So this is why we're here every day until we heard from the government that they are sitting talking.
Hamas has said it won't release more hostages until the Israeli offensive stops. But Qatar, who's been working as a mediator country in the conflict, isn't giving up on diplomatic efforts to renew a humanitarian pause. Verónica Valderas Iglesias, VOA News, Washington.
The UN Security Council may vote Monday on a resolution calling for a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip in order to provide safe conditions for humanitarian aid to reach Palestinian civilians. This video contains graphic content and viewer discretion is advised. Truckloads of aid have been reaching Gaza, and Israel last week opened another crossing for deliveries to enter. But the UN Humanitarian Agency says the 121 trucks that entered Saturday were far below the 500 per day that were carrying aid to Gaza before the war. The U.S. and Israel have argued that a ceasefire would benefit Hamas. During a visit in Israel Sunday, French Foreign Minister Catherine Colonna called for an immediate truce aimed at releasing more hostages and moving toward a political end to the war.
And above all, and I will end with this, we must work and work seriously to build a state for the Palestinians, not tomorrow, not the day after tomorrow, but now. This state must be viable to serve legitimate Palestinian aspirations. We know them. We must respect them. The Palestinians have the right to a state. The Israelis have a right to security, have the right to be accepted as a state without having to endure the constant calls for its destruction. Therefore, it is the right to peace and security for all that must be guaranteed, to use the words of the President of the Republic.
The UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees says the conflict has forced Palestinian civilians to seek refuge in UN shelters in southern Gaza that are several times over their intended capacity. Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has swept to a third six-year term as Egypt's president, winning nearly 90% of votes in an election in which he faced no serious challengers, according to the National Election Authority. The election took place as Egypt struggles with the economic crisis and tries to manage the risk of spillover from the war in Gaza, which borders Egypt's Sinai Peninsula. Some voters say the eruption of conflict in Gaza has encouraged them to vote for Sisi, who has long presented himself as a bulwark of stability in a volatile region, an argument that has also proved effective with Gulf and Western allies providing financial support to his government. Democratic Republic of Congo's incumbent president candidate Felix Tshisekedi held his final rally in Kinshasa Monday, the last official day of campaigning. Tshisekedi, 60, assumed power following a contentious 2018 election, leveraging a coalition forged with former President Joseph Kabila. However, soon after that, the alliance frayed, prompting Tshisekedi to align with other prominent Congolese political figures, including Economy Minister Vital Kamerhe and former Vice President Jean-Pierre Bemba. Tshisekedi took office promising to root out corruption and authoritarian rule, rebuild the economy, tackle inequalities, and deal with Congo's prolonged security crisis. But critics say he has fallen short on these issues. His first term has been marred by economic hardship, the COVID-19 pandemic, Ebola outbreaks, and persistent insecurity. Thousands attended opposition candidate Martin Fayulu's final campaign rally on Saturday. Fayulu, 67, a former oil executive and leader of the Engagement for Citizenship and Development Party, finished second to President Felix Tshisekedi in 2018. But Fayulu claims he won with over 62% of the vote and challenged the results in court. He is one of a few front-runners aiming to unseat Tshisekedi. Born in Kinshasa, Fayulu received a postgraduate education in France. He created his own party in 2009, and as a leading opposition candidate, he has often been in danger. He was present when police fired live rounds at his supporters ahead of the 2018 vote. Thousands gathered in Lubumbashi on Saturday to attend presidential candidate Moise Katumbi's final rally. Katumbi was welcomed by thousands of his supporters. Born of a Congolese mother and a Jewish Greek father who fled Rhodes Island under Italian fascist occupation and settled in Congo's Katanga in 1945, Katumbi's mixed heritage has been used by rivals to question his loyalty to Congo. Lawmakers allied with Tshisekedi introduced a bill in 2021 that was aimed at restricting the presidency to people with two Congolese parents, which would have disqualified Katumbi. Tshisekedi and his surrogates have labeled Katumbi as a candidate that represents foreign interests. At 20, Ishara Bahati Yassin is eligible to vote for the first time in the Democratic Republic of Congo's December 20th presidential election. He will bring years of frustration to the ballot box. Olivia Chan has more.
Conflict defined 20-year-old Ishara Bahati Yassin's childhood. Time and again, he was forced to flee his home in eastern Congo. Now he lives in a crowded camp for displaced people in Goma, sharing a tent with 3 brothers. He will be voting for the first time in the December 20th presidential election and says he will bring years of frustration to the ballot box.
I want the candidate we vote for in 2023 to be the one who can see the hardship in which we are living in Kibumba, in Rugari, in Masisi. I want him to work so we can find peace again and return to our villages and live quietly.
Congo's election is dominated by issues including the economy, corruption and mining. But for many in the East, President Felix Tshisekedi's failure to ease decades of violence is the biggest concern. Under Tshisekedi's watch, the rebel group M23 has carried out a campaign of killings, rape and kidnapping in response to an army clampdown. Attacks by armed groups have killed thousands and displaced nearly 7 million people. Dino Matani, a security analyst, says insecurity means people will be unable to vote.
It will be impossible to hold elections in large parts of North Kivu, which is one of the major provinces of the country. And that will, of course, impact the credibility of the election itself.
It's still unclear just how far insecurity will affect voting. The Electoral Commission last week asked the presidency to provide aircraft urgently to distribute voting materials in hard-to-reach areas. Despite the security challenges, Yassin is determined to cast his ballot, saying that he would like to vote in someone who will bring change and development to the country. Tshisekedi faces a challenge from veteran opposition politician Martin Fayulu, who claims to have been the true winner 5 years ago, and from Moise Katumbi, a former mining magnate.
That was Olivia Chan of Reuters reporting. Supporters of Congo's incumbent Felix Tshisekedi spoke glowingly about their candidate as they attended his last official day of campaigning in Kinshasa.
We support him for he embodies our vision as socialists. And I'll let you know that my party, the United Lumumbist Party, and Mr. Tshisekedi's party are both part of the Congolese left. His project and vision are in line with this social well-being. He is our winning ticket, and we want to accompany him throughout his campaign.
I'm here to support our head of state, our daddy. I've come to support him, to give him a second chance so he can accomplish even more than he has already done. I need him to achieve even more because he's unbelievably good. So in 2 years, he has introduced us to free education. In 2 years, women can give birth and not to pay anything. In 2 years, places that had neither water nor electricity have them now. It's unprecedented.
I just don't go out just like that. I'm here to see the head of the nation, the one I have chosen, along with the rest of the world, number 20, President Fattah. We have witnessed the president's accomplishments and we are looking forward to what he is going to do. So I am here to listen to what he has to tell us, to be comforted and to get ready to give him a second chance.
Supporters of Congo's incumbent presidential candidate Felix Tshisekedi speaking to VOA. Conflict and violence in the eastern Congo is among many concerns weighing on the country ahead of Wednesday's election. Reporter Zanem Neti Zaid spoke to some residents in Goma on what they expect from the winner of the poll.
We're waiting for the president to look after teachers as well, and we hope life will be better, because I'll be able to look after my family, clothe them and feed them. I could also buy land where I could build, or even find rent so my family could live comfortably.
We'd like the new president to fight to put an end to this war that's eating away at this country. There needs to be peace and quiet. The fact that we live in this bad life when back home we live thanks to agriculture, it hurts us.
Where there is no war, there is bound to be peace, so everything is easy to find, like food. Up until now, agricultural products we used to bring from the surrounding regions can no longer reach the town of Goma because the roads are closed. But if there was peace, food products can circulate easily. The first thing we hope for is peace.
Congo's resident speaking to VOA about Wednesday's presidential election. Still to come, a look at how generative artificial intelligence has infiltrated many industries. Stay with us.
In times of change, when the world seems uncertain and what we hear doesn't reflect what we see, we seek the truth. When we are told only part of the story, we lose trust. In moments of crisis, our dreams, hopes, and wishes for a better tomorrow depends on a free press. At Voice of America, we bring you the stories that people take risks to see. We connect the world and unite it with truth. At Voice of America, we show you the whole picture.
Health, wellness, sport, beauty, medical breakthroughs. Healthy Living cares about your well-being. What are the main health concerns in Africa and around the world? Find out the latest on coronavirus. Connect with our experts and ask them questions.
How long does the virus stay?
Join me, Linor Moudou, in Washington, every week on Healthy Living, right here on VOA.
In other news, a blast and fire at an oil terminal in Conakry, Guinea on Monday has killed at least 8 people and injured 84, according to a senior police official. The explosion at the main oil terminal rocked the administrative district in downtown Conakry. A Ugandan constitutional court on Monday is hearing the first challenge to an anti-gay law that is triggering criticism from the United Nations. The legislation contains provisions making aggravated homosexuality a capital offense and imposes penalties for consensual same-sex relations of up to life in prison. And Kenya's foreign ministry says it is distancing the nation from a Congolese opposition figure who has forged an alliance with M23 rebels and other armed groups while in Nairobi. Corneille Nangaa, the former head of Congo's Electoral Commission, announced Friday that he was creating a political military alliance with the rebel groups. Generative AI has infiltrated many industries in 2023 with substantial impacts for the music and film industry. Dana Mitchell reports.
Generative AI infiltrated many industries in 2023, with substantial impacts for the music and film industry, academia, and political advertising. But the biggest change lay directly in the hands of consumers, with ChatGPT, giving non-programmers the power to generate text, images, video, music, and software codes. Students were quick to embrace the technology, sounding alarms among some teachers that it is akin to cheating. Teacher Donnie Piercy sees it differently.
The idea of AI in education, definitely understand the concern, but I feel like there's going to be so much more good that comes out once we as teachers figure out how best to use it.
Piercy let students use ChatGPT to create a play and then tweak it to make it their own.
The AI wrote us the entire script, and we didn't even know there was going to be a robot and time traveling involved.
Musician Holly Herndon developed an app called Holly Plus that allows people to sing through her voice in real time. Musician Fur demonstrates here.
And it gets so murky.
Similar technology was used by an anonymous TikToker to create the viral hit Heart on My Sleeve, which sounded like megastars Drake and The Weeknd.
I think right now it seems really scary, and I completely understand why people are apprehensive about it, but I think in the future it could be something that's really playful, and that there are ways where the artist doesn't necessarily feel like they have relinquished all control over their work.
The issue of using other people's work to create generative AI datasets was central to the Hollywood actors and writers' strikes. Duncan Crabtree Ireland helped negotiate the actors' new contract with studios.
What we needed was informed consent and fair compensation. Those were the key principles we were fighting for. And also, limitations on the use of generative AI. All of those things exist in this contract.
Generative AI has also been used to create political deepfakes ahead of the 2024 U.S. presidential election. This video from a group affiliated with a Republican rival to the former President Donald Trump included AI-generated images of Trump hugging former White House chief medical advisor, Dr. Anthony Fauci, who is unpopular among many Republican voters. Stanford University professor Ge Wang says technology is outpacing human regulators. He spoke to VOA over Zoom.
Before we even had a chance to really figure out what one thing really means, the next quote-unquote groundbreaking thing is upon us. What's at stake is how we communicate, how we work, how we govern.
Federal lawmakers have introduced measures targeting the use of deepfakes and other manipulated content in federal elections. U.S. President Joe Biden signed an executive order in October, which establishes new standards for AI safety and security. Dina Mitchell, VOA News, Austin, Texas.
In the eastern U.S., the University of Maryland hosts more than 5,000 international students, most of them pursuing master's degrees or doctorates. VOA's Laura Bowman looks at why they chose to study in the U.S. and what they need to succeed.
Kemi Buseri is a journalist at home in Nigeria. He chose to pursue his doctorate in journalism in the U.S. because of its world-renowned professors.
I looked through the faculty and I saw professors who had been journalists at some point in their life and now teaching at the university. Also, these are professors who I read some of their research works without even knowing that I'll end up at the University of Maryland.
Master's degree student Himanshu Survey of India says the telecommunications engineering coursework in the U.S. is more practical than what he would receive elsewhere.
The U.S. has a good exposure when it comes to industry training.
it focuses more on the practical training than theoretical. So it's pretty much easier to relate what you're learning over here.
Jody Heckman-Bose helps acclimate international students to the University of Maryland as the Associate Director of International Student Scholar Services. She says many international students also decide to pursue graduate studies in the U.S. because of work-study opportunities called graduate assistantships.
These typically are 20 hours a week commitments to your department in which you're admitted to, where you may work as a graduate teaching assistant or a research assistant or just a general assistant. And in return for that work, you would receive tuition remission, which means you're not paying any tuition.
And she reminds international students who want to study in the U.S. that there's a lot they will need to do, like organizing housing and rental leases, finding roommates, obtaining health insurance, securing visas, setting up bank accounts, and registering for a social security number if they want to work.
As an international student, I would say that getting an accommodation was pretty tough. Then there was choosing the right bank, mobile carriers. Since we were in India, it was pretty difficult to know what things are good for us.
The key is try to start early. Before the classes start, I'd already had a bank account. I'd already made progress with my health insurance. I'd already made progress with applying for the Social Security card.
Heckman-Bose reminds prospective international students that universities offer many resources to help them set up their lives in the U.S., and that one silver lining of the COVID-19 pandemic was that her university put much of its outreach to international students online.
Because of the pandemic, we're able to reach to students before they arrive. So when they're in their home country, waiting to come to the United States, we're providing that information about housing, about health insurance, about getting a driver's license.
Preparing early, both she and the students say, can help an international student thrive. Laurel Bowman, VOA News, College Park, Maryland.
And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us in Washington, thanks for watching.